Good morning. I think we're all here on a Friday and ready to rock and roll. I would like to call the joint subcommittee on K-12 higher ed and CIP to order, and would the committee secretary please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Haddagy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblyman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Severs-Gansert. Senator Titus.
Here.
Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Present.
Chair Dondero Loop.
Here.
Thank you very much, and please mark those present as they arrive. I'd like to remind everyone to turn off their cell phones to limit disruptions. And if you're going to speak today, if you have a business card, if you could leave it with the secretary, that would be very helpful. Today on the agenda is the Nevada Department of Education, and they will be presenting 4 budgets. Superintendent Ebert, it looks like you're up first. So when you're ready, please begin. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Dondero Loop, members of this, both committees. Appreciate your time this morning. I am honored to serve as the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson will be going through the 4 counts. You have the slides, and then we will stand ready to answer questions that you may have. One at a time, she will go through them.
Good morning, Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson. For the record, we'll review budget account 2710, 2699, 2618, and 2718 today. Budget account 2710, as many know, is the budget account that provides the authority and expenditures for our COVID relief funds, which include the elementary, secondary school emergency relief, or ESSER, Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, or CARES, and the Education Stabilization Fund program, which includes the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, or GEAR. This budget account only has one enhancement, E490, which removes revenue and expenditure authority in fiscal year 25 for the expiring GEAR 2 and ESSER 2 grants. This removes approximately $261 million in revenue and expenditure authority for this budget account. And with that, we are available for questions.
Okay, short and sweet. We do have some questions. I believe Assemblywoman Haddagy has a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a few questions on the funding. So can you give us an update on the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching project and its success, or its lack thereof success?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as interim deputy comes to the table, I will tell you we're very pleased with that program. It's been very successful, and he can share all of the details with you since you asked that question.
Good morning, Interim Deputy Superintendent of Educator Effectiveness and Family Engagement, Craig Satuki, for the record. Thank you very much for the question. So far with the Incentivizing Pathway to Teaching program for FY 22-23, we have tuition awards that we've awarded to 2,075 recipients at $2,000 each, and stipend awards of 1,364 of up to $8,400 each.
How many received the $2,000?
2,075. And sorry, I have to clarify, that's Craig Satuki for the record, and that's up to $2,000 each.
Okay, thank you. And then just a follow-up, Madam Chair? Just, again, along the lines of COVID-19 funding, and Superintendent, this might be more for you. So I know that the 2021 legislature had approved money to implement a uniform financial management system. Can you give us an update on where that is?
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, for the record, we are currently moving forward with the contracting with the vendor. The RFP concluded, and we conducted the reviews and as well as a demo last week, and we hope to be in contract with them very soon.
So a vendor has been selected?
Megan Peterson, for the record, that's correct.
Thank you. And then just my last question, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And then, so this is, we've seen this happen with other departments, and so I want to ask the same question, but has there been any projects that you've experienced any delays in spending your ESSER II dollars where you might have to redirect some of that money?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. State Superintendent Joan Ebert. Yes, as we continue to move forward with the relief funds, I think I shared the other day the example where staffing, we had intended to hire additional staff, this $1.5 billion that came to the state. And unfortunately, we could not find the staff to hire. And so in those instances, the dollars are redirected to projects that are in alignment with the federal requirements.
Just last one on that. So, Madam Chair? Yes. Okay, thank you, sorry. And so staffing's the only area in which you've had to redirect dollars?
Oh, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, that is not the only area. That's one example. Do we have a listing for her? Okay, oh. So as we are, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as we are in the process of tracking all of the projects, we have not officially asked or moved dollars to specific projects. So we're in that process of identifying those pieces, and we'll be moving the money as we move forward.
And could I ask you to share that list when you have it ready? I mean, I think it would just be helpful for us to see which projects maybe we couldn't expend the money on, they have to be redirected. So.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, absolutely. And I also, too, just as the 10% of the funds for the department, which I know is what we're talking about today, but I'd also like to include the 90% that went directly to schools. We do have a website that shows the listing of all those expenditures as well.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblywoman Peters has some questions.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for going over this budget. Can you talk about the summer and after school program funding, including like successes, particularly related to learning loss that we experienced during the pandemic? How did those ESSER funds do for us?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, with a few summers that we've had so far, I was blending them in my head. So thank you for the question. With the additional funds and the summer programs that have been provided for students, I know you're very familiar with Washoe County School District. They did a very nice job of providing, which is normally not provided, transportation, food service, along with an educational environment for success. I will tell you, a lot of the school districts took the time this last summer to engage in the academics that are required, but also spent a lot of time with our students in project-based learning, the joy of learning, and their social emotional health. And that goes for the educators and all of the staff as well. So really using that time this summer to pick up on the opportunities that were not afforded during the pandemic. We did provide a report for the summer of, which we were required to out of statute, for the summer of 21, which I'm more than happy to provide for you as well. And then I think the school districts themselves are really well positioned to answer in-depth questions if you would like more information.
Thank you for that response. And I guess I was hoping that we would have some accountability metrics or proof of concept that the ESSER III fundings were successful in those counties. We can definitely ask those this weekend. I have one more question, Madam Chair, if I may. Please. Thank you. Do you foresee any issues with the completion of projects that were funded with ESSER III funding? And would those require this funding to be utilized for other purposes?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, your question was in regard to ESSER 3. Okay, the ARP ESSER, thank you for the clarity. So as we have moved forward with the pandemic, right, the first part of what all of us needed, health and safety, masks, cleanliness, resources for social distancing, for the department, teleworking. We saw the need move then into direct support for our staff as well as our students within the school districts, and that range is wide of need that has transpired. And then as we continue to move forward, I believe there will be things in 24, 25 as we move forward that will be new items identified as we come out of the pandemic and move forward. Accelerating learning for all of our students has been huge. A lot of the funds that you will see that the school districts used, either extended day or specific tutoring resources and support beyond the regular classroom day. So I'd say at this moment in time, yes, I do believe there will be a shift in as we project it into the future, what we need, but we want to be able to be flexible too, to adjust to the changing conditions, because this was an emergency. We will always, though, be in alignment with what the requirements are from the federal government to be, Title I, Title II, Title III, all of those pieces. We are very entrenched in making sure that those projects are in alignment with the requirements.
Thank you for those reassurances. I do want to explicitly, though, ask, do you foresee that these ESSER 3 funding will be obligated in their entirety by the September 30th, 2024 deadline? You mentioned the 24-25 might lead to some different needs, but that obligation funding deadline is there. So just wanting to make sure we're on track for that.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I am right there with you on this entire team. I refuse to send one penny back to the federal government when we know how great our needs are in our state. I will tell you I know the team here, as well as working with your staff, have we've been working very collaboratively to make sure that we can expend those funds in a timely manner as we see those needs shift. So I think that tight communication, collaboration, transparency are critical to make sure that we expend all of those funds on time by September 30th, 2024.
Thank you very much. And I will go to Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much. Superintendent, I'm going to turn from ESSER 2 to the GEAR 2 funding. And kind of along those same lines that my colleague just asked, I take it with the GEAR 2 funding that has to be expended by September 30th, 2023. The goal is to get that done. Do you see any hurdles, since that's kind of right around the corner?
Superintendent Ebert, it aligns to the question from Assemblywoman Howdigi on, we are currently in the process of identifying those projects that need adjustments. In some of our projects, we're, about 80%, 90%, 98%. May I borrow that for a moment, please? Thank you. So anywhere from a percentage of 98% on project expenditures to some that are in the 40s. And so those that are in the 40s, we're in constant contact with our staff, or if they've been awarded via a grant, on are we on track to expend. If we are not, those funds, similar to the other conversation, we will make sure that they are allocated to projects that can expend by the due date of September 2023. So we do not revert any funds.
I like where you're thinking on that. Thank you so much. And then also, it does not appear in the executive budget that the projected expenditures for all ESSER funds, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 and Gear 2 projects for fiscal year 2024 and 2025. Can you explain the issues the department is facing with projecting the expenditures for these projects for the next biennium?
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson for the record. As the department developed our budgets for the COVID funds, we were flexible in their implementation in terms of a plan or a project may have been identified for a 3-year plan. However, depending on the need, it may not have started in the year originally anticipated. So for example, if we had planned for fiscal year 21, it may actually have been implemented in fiscal year 23 or vice versa. As a result, we are continuing to work through and reconcile which projects will continue into fiscal year 24, and we hope to have fiscal year 24 projections in approximately 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblyman Yeager has a question, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here this morning. I actually have, I think, 3 or 4 questions just on the emergency assistance to non-public schools. And so the first question I had there is whether you could provide an update on the emergency assistance to non-public schools, including any successes or challenges that you may have had in administering the program.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman. For the record, State Superintendent Joan Ebert. Actually, I had a meeting with all of the non-public schools yesterday. I'm sorry, the days are all blending. And it was specifically those schools, entities that were below 70% of their spend to do 3 things. Number 1 is to, make sure that we have tight communication on where they are with their percentages. And so we're into that weekly mode now of correspondence of where they are. Number 2, if they had any additional questions or if they were running into problems with expenditures. And to, as this conversation is here this morning, if they are not on, this is our first time working with non-public schools. And it was a huge learning curve for both the department and for the non-public schools. They were not used to having to provide all of the details that we provide you in the federal government. So that was a huge learning curve for them. And we also needed to acquire a new tool in how to provide payment to them as well. So all of the layers of checks and balances we had to stand up because they did not exist. So it was a huge lift. So, gave everybody grace and kudos for the work that had been done. Also, too, though, reassuring everyone that if they are not on track to spend, and if at this moment in time they realize that they are not going to expend the dollars by September 30th of 2023, it is okay. What they need to do is let us know now, today. If they need to do, just like we were talking about, adjustments to the budget, that they provide that no later than July of this year. I asked them to please have them in tomorrow if they could, but we gave them a deadline. And that if they cannot expend, to let us know now so that we could reallocate those funds to other non-public schools. That is the first tier, if you will. Because we do have some non-public schools that are almost at 100% spend today. They've expended all the funds that they've been allocated. If they do not, if they cannot spend, if we find there's $50,000 that is made available, we will ask those non-public schools that have already expended funds. Are there projects that you have that align with the requirements? We'll reallocate. If we go through the non-public schools and they still cannot expend all those funds, we will then offer those funds to the public schools, which is allowed under the federal guidance that we have.
Thank you so much for that response, and certainly understand the challenges of having to stand up a new program with many schools that you haven't had to work with directly in the past. I think you answered my second question was going to be about concerns about expending the funds, but I think you've covered that, and I'm glad to hear that that is a priority, and please keep us updated as well, just because the last question you answered, we don't want to give any of this money back either, so we want to make sure we're spending it. Just a couple more questions, maybe more technical ones on that program. So my reading of the executive budget, it only reflects funding of $1.9 million in federal emergency assistance to non-public schools in fiscal year '24. So I'm wondering if there's adjustments that need to be made to that budget, because it doesn't look like all the remaining money is actually included in the executive budget for the upcoming biennium. Unless I'm reading it incorrectly, but I only saw 1.9 in there.
Superintendent Eber, for the record, we will need to research that because I believe it's there, but
Okay, it's entirely possible. It's been a very long week, and so if you could research that, and we just obviously want to make sure that the budget's going to reflect the actual expenditure. So when we have a chance to look at that, if there is a correction that needs to be made, if you could work with our fiscal staff to make sure that we get all that money that we need to get in there. So, thank you for the responses, and thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I believe that Senator Neal has a couple of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my questions are going to be on Assembly Bill 495 from 2021 session. Can you please provide an overview of the projects in the school district identified to be funded by the $200 million that was provided in AB 495 in 2021?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I apologize, I do not have that in front of me this morning, but I'm more than happy to provide it to you.
Okay, so I don't know if the next question would be relevant. Do you have any information associated with, because the following question was, why has only 1.6 million been expended out of the 200 million? So that was supposed to have been in our prior K-12 the other day, and then we didn't discuss it.
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, for the record, part of the reason only approximately 1.6 has been requested is the budgets were only initially approved in November, and so many of our subrecipients in that realm are on a quarterly reimbursement schedule, and so we just haven't received the reimbursement requests to date.
Madam Chair, can I dig into that a little bit? Okay, so, all right, November of 2022. Can you explain why that delay happened between what day? The 21 session, because that was ledge session, and November 2022. Why the distance between the approval?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, absolutely. This legislature had these funds made available as the last dollar to first expend what was made available by the federal government. And so they needed to have all of those plans in place first, which, as you know, as the money kept and requirements kept coming in, it's, step 1, step 2, step 3. And so since those were meant to be the last dollar, they had to expend and plan all of those first, the $1.5 billion from the federal government, and then tap into the AB 495 dollars, which as the meetings went forward, it landed that it was the November 2022 meeting that we received authority.
Thank you for that. Madam Chair, can I ask one more question? So this is, because what I noticed when we did the K-12 I guess the other day, there was a lot of general fund ask that were not federal, right? And so when as soon as you started telling me about the tier, I guess I'm wondering why haven't we tried to plug some of the holes, or not holes, but needs with the federal money, then 495, then come to the 2023 general fund, right? Because to me, that should really be way last on the list. And so, can you help me understand that?
Yes, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so we are asking you for general funds for the department. The department did not receive any of the $495, but we have, exactly to your point, we always use federal dollars first and within those allowable expenses, and then have come to you and asked for a general fund.
Can I have another follow-up? Okay, because I was looking at the list that was in our notes, and the state, you're considered the state education agency, right? Okay, so I just want to be clear. Because there were some contract positions, and I don't know if that money has already been expended, but there were contract positions that you guys received. I think it was approximately 5.5. You had so some Infinite Campus, e-page, grant reporting modifications, and then there was also the travel that's probably gone, but when I was looking at the list, I was trying to compare what was being asked for in the general fund versus what was on the list. And I know that I think it was a 90-10. You got 10%, and then 90 had to go out the door. But I'm just wondering, is there an overlay? Because it seemed like some contract positions would carry over in some of the work that you guys are trying to do that came from federal money.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so yes, as much as we can expend the federal funds with allowable categories, braid what we already have, multiple federal funding sources, right? Because we also receive the allocations that come through annually. And then we have the additional funds that came via the COVID relief dollars. Pairing those with our general fund and the work that we have needed to do, and then moving forward with the request. So yes, that is the thought process that we use as we go through our projects to provide services to the school districts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for those questions and answers. And with that, any other committee questions? Seeing none, we will close that budget and move on to Budget 2699.
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, for the record. Budget account 2699 is our budget account for other state education programs, and this includes programs such as Jobs for America's Graduates, public broadcasting, education leadership, career and technical education programs, as well as adult education. Again, today we have one enhancement for this budget account, Decision Unit E281, which is a new dual language pilot program, which is new to the department. This was requested at approximately $5.2 million in each fiscal year. I do want to note that during the budget review process, and then similar to the amendments discussed on Wednesday, this was entered incorrectly and duplicated for each fiscal year. A budget amendment has been submitted to reduce each fiscal year by approximately half, so that we have $5.2 million for the biennium. With that, we will pause for questions.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. In regards to this dual language immersion, just want to get some feedback on what the department has received, what type of feedback the department has received from schools that are currently operating the dual language program related to the cost to fund the program as well as the student outcomes.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Miller. Joan Ebert for the record. So currently in Nevada, we only have 6 dual language programs. Several of them are new and some are well established. It is an area that we have not, as a state and as a State Department of Education, moved in a strategic way to make sure that we have lighthouse schools, if you will, that can accelerate that learning. The data that we have in our state, I will tell you that at Mount Rose Elementary School, which is a K-8 dual language school, it was a pleasure to go visit them. Their 8th graders actually take the AP Spanish course and receive credit, and they earn, 3, 4s, and 5s on that national exam. So we have a great model in that school in the work that students are doing. The 3 schools in Clark County that are new, and they would even tell you they're in the pilot phase. It's a little too early to share their outcomes. But we have Jesse Beck also in Washoe, and then in the State Public Charter School Authority, the City of Las Vegas started the Strong Start program. They're currently grades K2, and I was looking at their data just the other day on the MAPS assessment, which we use for Read by Grade 3. They are accelerating at a great rate compared to their peers that are not participating in a dual language program. So those are the 6 programs that we currently have in the state. We are requesting the additional funds to help lift up and create models here so that we can expand the program. We know that we have over 100 languages here in Nevada, and having the assets that we have within our state and growing our students to be able to speak multiple languages at an early age. For most of us in this room, we were required to take a language in high school. Research has shown that is not the time to learn a second language. It is actually when you are a young person in growing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. That's when you need to be learning multiple languages. So we would like to see this pilot project start with elementary schools.
Please.
Thank you. I agree. It's probably much easier to grab a language when you are actually learning language, to grab additional languages and learn how to intersect them within, community and exercise. Question for you as it relates to the different programs that you mentioned. Do you have a breakdown or about how many students you have that are currently in those programs in the different districts? And it's okay if you need to get that back.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I do not have the number of students in each of these schools,
Okay.
but I will get that for you.
Okay, good deal. And one last question, Chair. So I understand there's a seal of biliteracy. There's a program for a seal of biliteracy, and some of our districts are prevented from being able to provide that. How would this dual language pilot program enable these districts to offer the seal of biliteracy programming?
Thank you for the question. State Superintendent Joan Ebert, for the record, the program that we're starting with is at elementary school. The seal of biliteracy is at high school. So it would take a while to see the specific dollars that if you choose to make that investment now in the elementary schools, it would be a moment to see that reflect in the seal of biliteracy at the high schools.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I believe Assemblywoman Hadagi has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I too am very excited about this statewide dual literacy program, and so I just have a couple questions on that one. And so I know that you guys are asking for a couple positions under Decision Unit E275 for this program to administer it. So can you talk to me a little bit about what the plan and implementation is going to be like to launch this statewide, and how long you think it'll take to actually award these grant dollars out to the agencies?
Thank you for the questions, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, so the positions that we spoke about on Wednesday, those will be working collaboratively with, we would like to hire a consultant with the dollars out of the 5.2 that we're requesting. So the consultant would be just as long as the period of the pilot, and then the work would transfer over to the person. So they'd be working hand in glove to start, to lift, kind of running two tracks, and then once we have it going, it will just be with the person that we spoke about on Wednesday. The time frame is if these dollars are allocated, we would immediately start the grant process for school districts to apply. We have been in contact with our colleagues in Texas who have spun up almost 100 schools over, yes, they're moving really quickly. They've done a huge investment in dual language programs in their state, and so we're going to borrow a lot of the work that they have done and lift it up here in our state. So the timing, it usually takes us, to get the grant going, to get the grant awarded. It would not, the program itself would not start during the 23-24 school year, which is coming up. However, the professional development, the purchase of materials, dual language materials, all of those things would happen this school year, the training, and then implementation for, with students, the 24-25 school year.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question on that. How are you guys going to measure success for this program?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, just as the Strong Start in Las Vegas has, we will be using our same assessments, our Read by Grade 3 program that we use, also our federal requirement. We also have the opportunity to administer some of those formative assessments in both languages, and so that would be new data for us to look at as we move forward.
Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a quick question. I don't know if you've answered this. I don't remember hearing it. How much do you think it costs per school to be able to lift them up to enable them to have a dual language program?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, depending on the size of the school, because some of our elementary schools are 200-300 students and some of them are 800. So we're projecting anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a school. So we're thinking maybe 4 to 6 elementary schools, depending on their size.
Thank you. And then something I noticed about the schools, at least the ones in Reno, they're K through 8. So are there K through 8, other K through 8 schools that are available, or is that important to convert it so that you have that longer duration of exposure or immersion?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, in our state, okay, that's not something we have at the top of our head, but there are very few K-8 schools. We did have a conversation about possibly delving into the middle school, but what we decided is that to really start with our youngest learners and then grow out of, because this is seed money, right? Proof of concept. And then to see how the school districts can move forward with it as the students age.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I kind of have a couple questions regarding the actual budgeted items. One thing I noticed when looking at the numbers, and I never sit in your shoes, so I don't know how it works when you input this information, but that it captured in both fiscal years 5.3 million, and I understand it was 1/2 that cost. You guys have submitted an amendment on that?
Megan Peterson, for the record, that's correct.
Okay, and with that, Madam Chair, I have a couple follow-ups then. And with that, and I was listening to your response to my colleague regarding in the first fiscal year, the program will be acquiring materials and doing training, and then the following year it will be implemented. And so with that, how did you all come to determine that it would be 2.6 billion in each year?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record. As I mentioned earlier, there are the professional development components So the first year is the professional development, acquiring the materials, and any travel was included in there as well to visit other schools. The second year, we're hoping that we'll see additional time and that's where it's a little, I can give you examples, but until we get the applications in, we see allowable expenses being if they would like to extend the school day, extend the school year, which we know that's where a lot of the dollars go rather quickly when you start investing in the human capital and the time with the students.
Along those lines, if the program were to continue, though, into future biennium, do you anticipate the cost to be the same, or is it really that first and second year will be a gauge of what the costs are going to be in the future?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, thank you. So this is a proof of concept for us as Nevadans. So we'll be collecting that data, and that's what we want to be able to share out, and hopefully within the school districts, they will be able to then make a determination within their budgets on which schools and which areas they can implement these programs moving forward.
I apologize. Thank you. One other question I had, and this is kind of one of these things that I'm very intrigued with because we've really moved forward. We've moved away from the categorical funding and we're moving now to the per pupil centered funding. And I see in this, it seems like we're almost going back to the categorical funding. And so with that, Mike, I'm just curious why it is that the governor is, if you know, recommended establishing this new categorical K-12 education program when in light of moving forward to the per pupil centered funding plan. Thank you so much.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, Assemblywoman, I am so glad you asked that question because this is one example of what can be. And I think over time, as we all move forward with education and making sure that our students receive the best, and it links into many components of what we have moving forward. If this body makes a determination that there is a specific need, you may all decide that you want to have a categorical fund again in a specific area. The per pupil funding does not prohibit from identifying specific target areas that you would like to either pilot, enhance, to make sure that our students are successful. So we've always seen, or I've always seen, and others as we move forward, that we will see ebbs and flows depending on the need of the state.
Chair, one more last question. Kind of not on this topic, but I just had a curiosity about one other item within this budget, and that's the funding for PBS. I know that during COVID, especially up north, there was like a lot of reliance on it with just educational programming, and I was curious if you knew when like the last time they had any enhancement in their budget under this. Thanks.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, it has been over a decade since that budget has received additional funds beyond what has been allocated.
I appreciate that, and thank you so much, Chair, for allowing extra questions.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question, and thank you for the presentation. I just need some clarification. So the dual language learning, is it mostly focused on Spanish, and the folks that already speak Spanish and get that dual language certificate? Or is it these schools actually teaching Spanish, so they're learning Spanish and English at the same time? And just a brief explanation. I'll just add that in our notes, apparently there was a Chinese language dual program, and that did not it wasn't sustainable, and apparently it failed. And so I just need a little clarification, and then I have one follow-up on that.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, what we would like to see is that at least half of the student population identified within the school are English language learners. And the other half currently do not speak another language. And so when you have, again, borrowing from my colleagues across the nation, when you have that mix, they've actually have found that there is greater acceleration for both groups of children when you have that percentage of 50-50. In other states, I mentioned Texas before, but in Washington State, they have lifted up programs based on the community. So, we know that there may be a community that in Nevada, Tagalog, there's a majority of students that speak both languages. So a district may end up applying for Tagalog in that based on the student population. So we're not restricting at this moment in time, but we'll be reviewing the applications as they come in, using indicators of success from other models to be able to move forward.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up a question on that same line. So thank you when you talk about a community and looking at what the individual communities might do, because I represent 6 rural counties and the Shoshone and Paiute communities there, and making sure they don't lose that language, and wondering if applicable to start these young children learning 2 languages, I think is a tremendous idea. So I'd love to see any thoughts about moving forward on some other concepts, especially for my rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question. To become a dual language school, does that start with the principal making the ask of you all, saying, I want our school to be it, I have this population, I'd love to have our school designated as a dual language school? How's that process?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, our applications have not only the principal, but the superintendent within the school district too, because making sure that alignment with leadership, that everyone can be successful is critical.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to kind of tag on to the questions that were asked by Senator Titus and Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. So you made the statement that it would be great for all the children to be ELL, right? And 50%. And so what popped into my mind was, number one, the funding. But 2, I wanted to ask, and I'm not against children learning other languages. I actually think it's a good idea, right? Because you use the word globally prepared. However, I'm just super curious, I guess, about the demographics and the students that are actually getting that right now. Because if you can answer that, because then I have another thought if you could answer that on demographics.
Yeah, Superintendent Ebert, I gave that number as an example in another state. That may not, be what transpires here. The demographics within Mount Rose Elementary School, I don't want to get off my top of my head, but I think at least a third of them are ELL currently. Strong Start in Las Vegas, I believe, is about a third as well.
And Strong Start is the Las Vegas?
The city of Las Vegas has a charter school, currently K-2.
Yeah, I'm aware. So I guess, I want to know, because I haven't seen an ask come across on trying to fund, and immediately I thought about former Victory schools, and also I thought about how a dual language program would change the dynamic in shared schools where we have Black and brown sharing an educational system, which is common in East and North Las Vegas and West Las Vegas. and how that could really change, number one, the community, the dynamic, the respect, the learning, the peer-to-peer relationships, and where we are in trying to advance, I guess, that is one of the initiatives. And does any of the ESSER gear, AB 495, 200 unspent could apply to any of these?
Thank you, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, at the initial ask from the team early on was out of federal dollars, but we had other needs, as mentioned earlier, the incentivizing teacher pathway, right? We need to get teachers in the classroom. So it at that moment in time did not fit within the federal budget that we were allocated. As we see the shift, I like where you're going. That definitely is something that we could look at as we move forward. And then if this body choose to add additional funds to the request, I'm sure that we could accommodate that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just like, I doubt if that's going to happen. But from the existing, unspent money, I think that, in our frugalness, and I don't know if it's frugalness, there's a lot of money sitting on the table. The question is there room to move money towards those goals, right, without tapping into the existing general fund? I think that's kind of I know that's where my thought is, like, spend the extra, but not tap into what you have until you take care of all of that other money that's out there.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I want to go back to the question that Chair Backus had asked about the categorical funding, because it was very intentional that, and I know we can always establish categoricals, but the purpose of the pupil-centered funding plan was to not have those categoricals, so that we were not in the position of just approving new categoricals over and over again. So I think that it's good to start from that premise. So certainly you could do that, just like we could, do almost anything, but that was very purposeful with respect to the pupil-centered funding plan. So is there any reason why we could not put that money for the pilot program, for the dual language program, into the pupil-centered funding plan, and then allow for the department and your staff to make sure that those programs are happening in schools where they can, instead of setting it up as a separate categorical outside of the formula?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as I was turning to my colleague, the mechanism. So yes, first of all, I want to validate everything you said. The intent, absolutely, 100% agree with you. I'm processing the mechanism to do that. It would require a change in the funding formula itself. So I believe you would need to change the legislation because right now we specifically have the base and the tiers. I can't conceptually figure out how that would fit without your action on the flow of those dollars.
Well, I guess to that point, right, when schools get money, they can implement these programs. And I think that's one of the things about the pupil-centered funding plan, right, is that this doesn't prohibit schools from having things like a dual language program or another program to help different at-risk students, or literacy programs or tutoring programs or anything that might help with student achievement. It's just the mechanism and the way in which you fund it, whether it is a cornered off section of funding that's a categorical that lives outside the formula, or if it's additional money into the formula that then we are working with districts to make sure that they're implementing programs, or that different schools that have those particular needs can implement those programs, right? And so to me, this feels like something that if there was additional monies that flowed into the formula, but we were able to set up supports for districts or for schools to actually implement this program, that's really a mechanism that to me seems to fit more within the purpose and the intent of the pupil-centered funding program. So I don't know, I guess we can talk more through that. Those are just some of my thoughts. I don't know, and I guess I don't see it as something that would require a change to the pupil-centered funding plan. And certainly I think there's a lot of good support, and dual language is incredibly important. I'm just worried about if we start setting up all these categoricals, like then we are just going down the same path of everything that we've worked hard to try to change how it is that we're making sure money gets to schools.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so I would love to continue this conversation on how that would work. Off the top of my head, I think about the Read by Grade 3 program, how it is still in law that they must have the literacy strategists identified at each school, and the requirements for the program are still in the law, but it is not categorical anymore. So that's where my mind is going, and yes, I believe that to be true.
And I appreciate that, and happy to continue to talk about that so that we can kind of achieve, I think, what are good goals with this particular type of a program, but also within how it is that we have changed the funding structure for education. And thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask a quick question and make a quick comment. And I might leave my question till after Senator Gansard, but I just wanted to follow up on the categoricals. I think we need to remember that one of the reasons that we sort of redefined what that was is because we could have 3 or 4 children, ELL children, right? ESL children who need assistance in a school that is not getting that categorical funding. And so we wanted to make sure that those children were served, even though they may be in a school that is not 80% ESL. So I think that's the thing that we need to remember. And with this program, I think my question is how are we going to, I know it's an application process, but where do we cut off, right? What if a lot of them, I mean, we've done this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, because you and I have been through a couple generations of different jobs, but it's my recollection that we've done this before. We actually had a school that was designated at this, Marlon Walker in Henderson. I believe that was a dual language school. So we've done this before, and for whatever reason, it was sort of there but not there. So what is going to make this successful?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, in that instance, because that was generations ago, I believe that it was specific with a shift in support from the school district itself. And what I would add to it, currently we do not have a state model. Those are just individual school districts that have made the determination. We would like to lift it up to the state to create those lighthouse schools, and then make sure that the school districts are not individual in the work, but they cross-fertilize with their learning with, and was brought up by Senator Neal, and then also Senator Titus, the cultural, right, aspect of language. It's phenomenal. And so bringing that at the state level and making sure and having, if you will, the competitive grant piece and then also the oversight, I believe that we will be much more successful moving forward.
Thank you very much for that answer. I guess I just wanted to point out that A, this wasn't a new idea. This has been around. And B, it has just been delivered maybe differently in the big scheme of things. So this is changing that piece, right? So All right, thank you very much, and I have another question, but I'll let Senator Ganser go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was afraid you were moving on. That's the only reason I was waving. So thank you. And just to follow up on the majority leader's question about the funding, right now we put about $4,400 more per English language learner into one of the tiers, right? And I'm wondering about sort of flipping what using those dollars and sort of flipping the scenario, because we're basically in the English language learner schools, or for those students, we're trying to get them to learn English, but there might be an opportunity basically to have this immersion sort of dual language for whoever is attending, whether they're English language learners or not. But so the thought is we're sort of pushing towards English all the time versus maybe accepting another language and creating the dual language around that using some of the money that we have, and they probably need startup money. But I don't know if we've tried to do that. So that's one piece. And then the other piece is, do you know how much more we're spending per child, or are we spending more per child when you look at schools like Mount Rose and Jessie Beck who already have these immersion programs? Is it actually costing them less, or because they have so many students who are ELL, they're able to do that for maybe the same type of dollars? Thank you.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, with the funding formula just, finishing its first biennium, I have not asked this, or the first piece. Moving forward, it's the $4,400. What was in the current was just under 2,000, I believe. And so, it wouldn't be apples and oranges, I guess is what I'm saying, and looking at the funding that is there. But I can definitely check with the school districts on the additional funds that have or have not been invested in these schools.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'll follow up with my last thought about this budget, and that was we touched on PBS just a little bit, and you had said that it kind of had been over a decade without enhancements. Am I correct on that? Is that the same? Can you address, adult high school, jobs for Nevada's graduates? Can you kind of just touch on some of those other programs that are in this budget?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, let me make sure I get the list. Okay. Superintendent Ebert, for the record, for the Jobs for America's graduate, in that program, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, in each of these programs, as I go down the list with Jobs for America, the public broadcasting, the CTE programs, adult education, and education leadership, all of those funds, mainly flat, if not just an additional few dollars that were asked for moving forward for these programs.
Okay, thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee? All right, with that, we will move on to budget account 2618.
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, for the record, budget account 2618 provides funding for our professional development programs, and this specifically includes the statewide council for coordination of regional training programs, which we refer to as as RPDPs. This program serves 3 regional areas and provides professional development opportunities for school districts. We have, again, one enhancement for this budget account, E276, which increases funding for this program by approximately 3%, totaling $223,000 in each year of the biennium. And with that, we will pause for questions.
I'll start with Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question just on the increase in cost of the regional professional development programs. I saw an increase in cost in the recent fiscal years, was hoping you could discuss what was driving that increase.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as the budget requests were submitted in the fall, we were looking at just the wages. The RPDPs are funded at the wages of the local school districts. And so looking at what has transpired at that moment in time, and they also to look at inflation and those pieces. So it was the 3% increase that was requested. I will tell you today, Deputy Superintendent Peterson and I were speaking about just inflation, and we're at 4.5. So a lot of movement from even when the budget was submitted to today. But the budget request at the time was 3%.
Thank you very much. And Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you hit on my question in your last answer. In the methodology for the RPDPs, and I thank you for shortening that, I appreciate it, in the 2019 session, was that the programs would be based on the cost of living adjustment only, the salaries only. But it appears that in this budget, it's recommended that it won't just be the cost of living adjustments, but also based on the salary cost only? Has the methodology changed in this budget of how that 3% increase is being allocated? Has methodology changed from how it was originally set up in 2019? I know we had to make some cuts in special session. And I'll add my next question also. When you look at the recommended budget from the governor, it doesn't appear that we're restoring the funding to what it was previous pandemic. And do you know why it's not restored to what was taken away? I know that's a lot, and I apologize.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as we come before you, with all of our requests and with the governor's budget, making sure that we understand the context that we have here in Nevada. And so balancing that piece of where we were prior to the pandemic, where we are today, the other requests that the department itself has asked for, is there. And in this particular budget request that was put forward in the budget, in the governor's budget, it was not inclusive of what you had mentioned, the restoration prior to the pandemic.
And then it appears that the increase of that 3% was for the overall cost, not just the cost of living. Was that a decision? Why was that decision made to change the methodology of the money going into it?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so I will own that in working in conversations with the RPDP and then also with the governor's office and seeing what made sense at that moment. So yes, that methodology was the overall, as you mentioned. It was not just the personnel increase. It was the overall of the program.
Thank you very much. And I have a couple questions, just in general. How do we know that the instruction is improving from that professional development, and what kind of documentation are we following up to support that implementation?
Thank you for the questions, Senator. Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so we do receive annual reports from the RPDP. We do work there, just for clarity for everyone to make sure, the RPDPs do not report to the Department of Education. And so we do work collaboratively to try to make sure that state initiatives, drives, data that we see, that the RPDPs are providing those supports. However, at the local level, superintendents may make the determination that they want to see professional development in another way. So that's a long way of saying they do provide reports to the Department of Education on the professional development that has been requested by the local superintendents.
So I guess that's why I had the question, because I thought we're funding this, but we really don't know, in a way. We're not receiving reports on the follow-up. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, we do have the reports from the RPDPs on the professional development that they have provided, yes.
And the other question I have is just sort of a research question, if you will. So most of the trainings are less than 2 days, I think, or 2 days and less. And I know that from my training days, that there was always the thought that extended professional development is more effective. So I was kind of wondering where the 2-day mark came from, because, like I said, from my training days, I know that, they needed to be, I believe the cutoff line was always 4 days or more.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, thank you, Senator. I am not sure on the 2-day piece. We do have representatives of the RPDP here in the audience if you would like them to answer that. What I can share with you is that we have asked them to join us in Read by Grade 3 in Science of Reading, and that professional development is over time because that is best practice, as you know. And so that professional development that we have been engaged with them is over an extended period of time, and it is not just 2 days. And I'm not.
Thank you. And I know that my Vice Chair has some questions as well, but the reason I ask those is because I think it's important that we understand, right? We're not all educators, so we understand what our PDP does, and we also make sure that we're following best practices within the system. So I'll go to Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I'm probably not as familiar with this area, but how is the department specifically supporting the state initiatives?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, for clarity, how are the RPDPs supporting the state initiatives?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So as I noted earlier, we do have a collaborative relationship. We do not have a direct report relationship with the RPDPs. And so we do have a staff member that sits as non-voting member on the council as well. So we recommend as a department specific things. At the end of the day, the RPDP's local governing board makes a determination on the final professional development.
Thank you for that. And then also, I know we were kind of touching on the different trainings, but can you provide the name of the trainings that are provided that directly train teachers in teaching the standards in each content area?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, yes, we do have those reports and we can provide them for you.
Madam Chair, I have one more question, and thank you for offering that. And we may touch on this in the next budget item, but with this, how are you supporting the retention of teachers?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I would need to ask the RPDPs directly on the professional development for teacher retention. That I do not have off the top of my head.
Thank you very much. And if you could get those things back to us, that would be great. And I believe Senator Neal has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to kind of follow up on this because I was looking at the ESSER 3 approved expenditures around professional development, and it's baby print. So there was $3 million that went to partnership with 3 statewide education leadership networks to develop and deliver evidence-based training and professional development. I'm wondering, how does that roll into the request? Then also, there was $3 million for technical assistance to support local education agencies with strategic planning process for state's lowest performing schools. And then there was another $3.9 million to assess instructional materials to address learning loss in reading and help students transition from elementary arithmetic to algebra. And then there was $6 million of development of a portrait of a Nevada graduate to determine future-ready skills, disposition, and then pupils to be college and career life ready. So to me, that rolls into professional development. And then there was an additional $15 million for teacher recruitment and retention, which in the description has micro-credentialing and professional development. And so with the ask, how do these ESSER $3 roll into this budget request?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, thank you for, yes, all of those items that, the very first one that you spoke to with our lowest performing schools is our contract with West Ed. And so building the capacity with our CSI and TSI schools and our one-star schools, that is that professional development. What I would, overall, when you add those together, they braid together in an entire system. So we definitely are cognizant to make sure there's no overlap in the professional development that is provided and that it is targeted. So you will not see in those specific professional development that we're using the ESSER funds for, there's not an overlap with the RPDP work that is transpiring. And they are all a need within our state.
Thank you for that. And I guess the question that I had was, should there be an overlap? Because they are speaking to the same issue and they're going down to the schools, and the work is to prepare a teacher, make sure a teacher knows how to do a particular thing with a child.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I think there could be a more strategic alignment between the state work and the RPDPs. That is not currently how it's structured, and so we just work collaboratively, and it is not a direct piece.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and we'll go to Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question about special education teachers. When we look at the RPDPs, are there specialized training for those teachers? Also, I know you said you would have a list of the trainings brought to us in the future, but to make sure that they're up to date on what they should be doing with their children that are with their IEPs, but also if they have to assist in a classroom that's not their traditional classroom, that they have the training for that as well.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, yes, there is professional development provided for special education with the RPDPs as well. What I would say in this entire realm of professional development and support, with the amount of new educators that we have in our state, and also the RPDPs not only are supporting the current licensed teachers, but also the substitutes in classrooms as well, to make sure that they have the supports to support the students. So there is a massive support need in our state. I will tell you that the RPDPs play a critical role in this, and if we can have the strategic alignment, making sure that the funds are allocated appropriately and moving forward, I think we will see greater student success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, unless we have any other questions from the committee, Assemblyman C.H. Miller, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question, and it's on the ES, I don't have all of the correct, I'm new to the committee, I don't have all of the things together, but I saw on there's a, and you may not have all the details, but maybe if you could provide some more information. There is a study or a evaluation and assessment with UNLV. It's $20,000 for the achievement of black pupils. Do you have any context around what that program is? Can you share?
Yes, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, thank you for noticing that program. UNLV just completed that work, so we do have the report. I'm more than happy to share with the committee as well. What they did is identified schools within our state that are having the highest gains with black students. And so what was very interesting as well is that the study started with that it had to have at least 30 black students in the school to be considered for the study, in all elementary. They're all in Southern Nevada.
Okay, thank you. So the study is already done and completed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for asking that question. Any additional questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we will close that particular budget and we will go on to budget 2718.
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson, for the record, budget account 2718 provides funding for our Teach Nevada Scholarship Program. There is one enhancement for this budget account that is split between two programs, E275 providing $10 million in each year of the biennium. As I mentioned, this funding is split between two programs. Of the $10 million, $3.2 million is recommended to fund the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program, and $6.7 million is recommended to fund the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching Program. For additional background, Teach Nevada Scholarship provides students who are awarded scholarships by their teacher preparation program with 75% of the scholarship for reimbursement towards tuition, books, and fees, and the remaining 25% of the scholarship is retained by NDE and reimbursed to the student after 5 consecutive years of successful teaching in a Nevada public school, as well as meeting the other requirements as identified by the State Board of Education. In comparison, the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching program is folded, as mentioned, into this budget account and has been created for financial supports to ensure qualified educator candidates have the resources they need to complete their educated preparation programs on time. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and we are ready for questions.
Thank you very much, and I believe we'll start with Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We love a good retention and recruitment program. Can you talk about how the additional funding for the Teach Nevada Scholarship would address the educator shortage, though?
Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki for the record. So you're specific to the Teach Nevada Scholarship, is that correct? Yes. So as we know, we're desperately short educators in the state of Nevada, and so when we're looking at providing scholarships for those educators, we're really helping them get through their college experience. As we're currently seeing in our career and technical education teaching and training programs, we are expanding those very rapidly. So we are developing a long-term pipeline. This Teach Nevada Scholarship will eventually help those students who are finishing their high school programs into our public institutions and also our alternative licensure programs be able to complete those programs in a timely fashion.
Chair, one more question. Thank you. I guess my question was specifically to the additional funding for that program and how that enhances the education shortage efforts. I'm not sure I heard that in the response, or that we know, the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program, how it works, but this additional funding request, that piece.
Thank you. Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki for the record. So again, as we see the increased funding, as we're seeing an increased pipeline we have more students who are going to need those scholarships going forward, and so we're being proactive in being able to fund those. Currently, from fiscal year 16 through 23, we've had 430 completers, and we have currently 759 students who are receiving scholarships currently.
That leads into another my last question. I think so. From the recipients who have completed the program, how many of those are still actively teaching in public schools here in Nevada?
Thank you for the question, Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki, for the record. Based on the information that because we don't, due to FERPA, we don't get necessarily direct information from the post-secondary institutions, but what we are able to utilize is the way school districts upload their teacher positions to us so that we can upload them into our licensure system. We believe we have 291 educators who are currently employed who have received Teach Nevada scholarships. I will clarify that number could include educators who are currently substitute teachers because we pull license numbers, and so they may be substitutes who are working as a substitute and going to school and earning the Teach Nevada scholarship. So that's not necessarily 291 full-time teachers, but I just want to be clear on that.
Thank you for that. And I'm sorry, just one more question on longevity. Do you have any numbers on like how long on average Teach Nevada scholarship recipients stay teaching in Nevada? Is that some data you could get us?
That is not, sorry, Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki, for the record. That's not data I necessarily have readily available. I can say that part of the Teach Nevada scholarship is that there are certain requirements where those educators can collect an extra 25% if they're teach within the state for 5 years, along with some other additional criteria. We have 35 educators who have collected that 25% so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would love if you could follow up on that actively teaching part. I know that you said we weren't sharing that between the higher ed, but if we could, I think that would help us. Thank you. Next question, I think, is from Assemblyman Miller.
Yes, Chair, it's me. Thank you. So,
that was good.
So I'm curious to know, how is the department tracking and reconciling its grant awards to ensure funding from scholarship recipients who drop out of the program are reallocated to new recipients?
Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki, for the record. I believe Director Brisky is in the Las Vegas boardroom, and he can kind of go over that process for you.
Good morning. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you for the question. Jeff Brisky, Director of Educator Development, Licensure, Family Engagement. Our office also oversees the Teach Nevada Scholarship, so I appreciate the question. Those students who either complete the program or separate from the program, their funds are reverted to the state. That is tracked on an individual student basis. And when those funds come back, we are able to recoup those and then reissue those as future scholarships in the next fiscal year.
Okay, follow-up, Chair?
Please.
So it leads into my next question. How much funding is currently available that has been or could be reallocated? So when we turn it back into new scholarships, how much money are we talking about?
Jeff Brisky, NDE, for the record. I don't have that for this current fiscal year. I can certainly get that back to you, but I can tell you that over the years, from when the scholarship started in 16 through current year, we had $3.3 million that was reverted, unused tuition from either completers or separators.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have I always say quick question. I don't know if they're quick questions, but since the governor's initial recommendation included the additional positions, such as the social workers, the nurses, the mental health professionals, counselors, school psychologists, I think I have them all, for the Teach Nevada Scholarship, which is now not being recommended, should the enhancement funding amount of $3.2 million be reduced?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, with the educator shortage that we have, I would not recommend reducing this, even though there is still a need in those areas. At the beginning of this school year, we had 1,976 long-term substitutes. And so we need to fill those classrooms with licensed educators.
And thank you for that. My concern is that while I absolutely agree that we need to have the licensed educators in the classrooms, I sort of worry about deleting, if you will, the mental health professionals, and I'm saying that in a very broad category, so I'm not listing them all. Thank you very much. And with that, we will go to Senator Cannizzaro.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to talk a little bit about that $20.7 million in federal funding that's for the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching grant program. And so do you anticipate fully expending that funding prior to the expiration of the grant funds?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, at this moment in time, we believe there is probably $1.5 million that will not be expended by the September 30th, 2023 timeframe, and we're in the process of reallocating those dollars to projects that the money will be expended by September 30th, 2023.
And so that money can go to additional programs and would be within the obligation spending deadlines for those other programs.
Superintendent Ebert, that is correct.
Do you have any idea what those other programs are or might be?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, there are several different things that we are currently looking at. I believe we have an IFC request in for April 6th. And so if approved, that is one of the areas where those dollars would go.
Okay. And then how does the department ensure that the recipients of the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching grant program obtain their teaching license and obtain employment in public school in Nevada?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, part of acceptance of the funds is that they do attain their license and teach in a Nevada school for 2 years.
Right. I guess I'm asking, what is the department doing to make sure that that actually happens for the licensing and then getting that subsequent employment?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, the students that have currently gone through, I need to track the exact number, but we do have the process in place. If just Jeff Brisky, we're following the same process for the Teach Nevada scholarship. It aligned with this current program as well.
Okay, and that actually brings me to my next question, which is, how does this program for the Incentivizing Pathways differ from that Teach Nevada scholarship program, either in application or in the administration of? Where are you seeing those differences?
Thank you for the question, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, I'll start with the Incentivizing Teacher Pathway, and then I'll have my team go into the Teach Nevada scholarship. What we, when we looked at the data for completers in the education pipeline, we saw in working with higher education institutions that students that are in higher ed following through their program, they get to their third year and many of them were not completing. The reason being is that we ask in the profession of teaching for people to quit their jobs for 12 weeks and do their internship and with no pay. And so people can't afford to do that, especially in this environment. And so we made the scholarships available for those most in need through the Incentivizing Teacher Pathway up to $8,400. We worked with higher education institutions to identify those students, and then also those dollars specifically were for the last year of if you will, those that are almost across the finish line, but for one reason or another couldn't make it because of funds. And they are here in our state. So that is how that program came about, because the Teach Nevada Scholarship is much a longer term scholarship, which I'll have my colleague go through.
Thank you, Superintendent. Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki for the record. And again, to the superintendent's point, the IEPT tuition awards are focused on students who are in traditional programs and are enrolled in their final 3 semesters within their traditional licensure pathway. The Teach Nevada Scholarship is open to not only students in the traditional pathway, but also through our alternative routes to licensure. Funds from the Teach Nevada Scholarship and IPT can be braided by students at some prep programs to help maximize the support for students.
Thank you very much. And I have a quick question. Has there been any discussion about having those students have to teach more than 2 years? When we talk about WICHE, it's usually a 5-year piece. And those of us that have been in education know that it truly takes more than 2 years to craft our skill, if you will. I worry about, the 2-year period being just short enough that, I'll do this, and then if I don't like it, I'll move on, and not really giving themselves enough time to know that piece. So I was just curious if there was any discussion about increasing that timeline.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, when the program first started, rather quickly, getting the money out the door, that first set of students, we did not have that, even though we spoke about the requirement, it did not make it into the contract with the higher education institutions. When we added that requirement into the allocation of those funds, we actually lost, I think, 2 institutions made the determination not to participate with that requirement. So the discussion beyond the 2 years has not been had.
And I'll go back to the WICHE conversation. We're giving funding, and I know that we desperately need teachers, but we're also giving out money. So it's sort of a reward for doing that. And so I would hope that maybe we could have some conversation about that and see if there's a timeline that works. And if it's 2 years, it's 2 years. But I do think that when you award scholarships, there's always something that whether it's grades, whether it's playing basketball, whether it's teaching for 2 years, being a veterinarian for 4 or 5, whatever it is. There's always some stipulation with funding. And so I would love to have that conversation. And if I'm wrong, I would totally own it. I would just be curious. Thank you very much. And I believe Assemblywoman Peters might have a question. I'm sorry. Wrong S. Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And kind of following with the incentivizing pathways to teaching grant program, I had a question because I saw that there was the one contract position equivalent to an education programs professional to manage that program, but that funding does expire in September of 2023. And so I was curious with what staff is going to administer the incentivizing pathways to teaching grant program, and are you considering having existing staff who administer the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program to be able to assume this work?
Interim Deputy Superintendent Craig Satuki for the record. I'm going to defer this question to Director Brisky in Las Vegas.
Thank you for the question, Jeff Brisky, NDE for the record. The staff member that was funded using these ESSER dollars is most of her duties currently are setting up a statewide coordinating system for teacher recruitment and retention. She has formed the coalition for teacher recruitment and retention using HR directors from the districts, and that coalition directly reported to the Teacher Recruitment and Retention Task Force. We do have staff that is currently running the Teach Nevada Scholarship, and they are also assisting mostly with the day-to-day effort on the incentivizing pathways to teacher scholarships as well. And that includes the management analysts that we have in our office.
Let me have a follow-up with that. So once that staff member who's currently funded with those ESSER funds is obviously the contract is up, I take it that the work they're doing is no longer going to have to be carried by someone else. Is that what you're saying?
Jeff Brisky, ND. For the record, we would like to continue that work on teacher recruitment and retention, and we do that work through other areas in our office. So yes, the work will continue, but probably not as full steam as it is currently.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Chair, I have a couple more questions on a different area. And this may go to Superintendent. Are there any statutory changes that are needed to carry out the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching grant program? And how does the department or the Governor's Finance Office plan on requesting those statutory changes?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I am not aware of any changes that are needed at this time.
Okay, in my notes, my backup, it just had that the department indicates that statutory changes to Chapter 391A of NRS would be needed to implement the recommendation, including allowing funding from the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program account to be used for stipends in addition to scholarships. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I will research that and provide you with an answer.
Thank you so much. And then one last question, Chair. How were the recommended amounts for the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program and the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching grant program determined for each year of the 2023 to 2025 biennium?
Like many of the answers that we've had before, understanding, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, understanding context and what seems reasonable that that everyone would agree to. We have the Teach Nevada Scholarship and the Incentivizing Teachers Pathway. As noted earlier, the Incentivizing Teachers Pathway was nearly $10 million annually on its own. And so we scaled that amount back in this budget request. It was not $10 million annually, and then also included the Teach Nevada Scholarship. So it's finding that balance because those dollars are directed at two different groups, two different needs, the balance between the two, and that is how the $10 million per fiscal year request came about.
And I'll ask one follow-up to that. Do any of our foundation or other members of our communities on all ends of the state, not just Clark County, but do any of those partners assist with this or help with this?
Thank you for the question, Senator Dondero Loop. We are very fortunate that during the entire pandemic, nonprofits have stepped up to help in many different ways. To your question specifically about the teacher pipeline, and if we start naming people, I'm afraid I'm going to forget someone. But specifically, we have the Public Education Foundation has stepped up helping with UNLV and the paraprofessional program. They've dedicated time, money, also resources in that area, and that's a program that we work with as a department. I was speaking most recently with NASA and their group spinning up, bringing in additional resources. You have Teach for America who comes in. You also have, we also have, oh my gosh, there's a plethora of nonprofits that are stepping up to help close the gap. Actually, I was going to say, I did have a conversation with another nonprofit that wants to come in that has helped in other states, specifically in Illinois and New Mexico. So there are a lot of people that are here that call Nevada home now that want to help in this area.
Thank you, and I just wanted to point out that we have community partnerships, so thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee? All right, well, with that being said, we will close that budget. And Superintendent Ebert, thank you so much to you and your team for being here this morning and answering all these questions. And we look forward to getting the information that you need to supply to us. And so now we will move into public comment, which is our last item on the agenda. Due to time considerations, if we can keep those comments to 2 minutes, please remember to state and spell your name for the record. If you are calling in, please dial 888-475-4499. And when prompted for the meeting ID, it will be 886-8865-7984, and then press pound. And then when you are asked for the participant ID, you will press pound again. So I will begin here in Carson City, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Renee Cantu. I am the Executive Director for Jobs for Nevada's Graduates. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to you and all of your colleagues for your support of our mission. With your help, we have helped 19,676 students help to graduate and find a career pathway since we were started. I am here this morning simply to request request for a budget amendment restoration for our 14% COVID budget cut and a small inflationary adjustment to preserve existing programs. That is currently our need in order to move forward, so I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to inform you of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. Since the COVID pandemic, educators left their jobs in record numbers due to low pay and severely low morale. With only a few months left in the school year, there are still thousands of school vacancies, with many more positions being covered by long-term subs, or in some of our rural areas, privately contracted virtual teachers. The educator shortage will only get worse this summer. This is why NSCA consistently articulates what Nevada must do to address this crisis. Time for 20. That means a 20% educator raise, a $20 minimum wage for those who make schools run, and reaching an average class size of 20 students. The COVID-19 pandemic clearly worsened Nevada's crisis in educator vacancies. In response to these impacts, our national union was the loudest voice for significant federal investment in public education. We wrote hundreds of thousands of messages, placed thousands of calls to representatives advocating for Congress to pass this largest ever investment in Nevada schools. The NEA made sure language was included in the federal law so school districts could prioritize educator pay, and NSCA advocated for this use in Nevada's state plan. However, only about 40% of all federal relief dollars have been budgeted for staff, despite staff being the most significant line item in every school budget. Most federal funds for staff have paid for supplementing education, like paying for summer school or adding positions. Expenditures on retention efforts have largely been limited to one-time or two-time retention incentives. While these bonuses are nice, they have proven largely ineffective at reducing our educator vacancies. Even though they control a small percentage of the overall federal dollars, the Department of Education has done little on the issue of retention. Accountability starts at the top. The good news is there are resources available, $700 million in unspent ESSER funds, $733 million recommended for the Education Stabilization Reserve, $1.6 billion recommended for the Rainy Day Fund. We have the resources right now to deliver Time for 20 Tomorrow, you'll be meeting to demand accountability from school districts. Today, educators across the state demand the same of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and please go ahead.
My name is Rachel Drake, Racheldrake. I'm a school counselor in Reno. In 2020, I was recognized for my work and named Nevada School Counselor of the Year. I am here to talk about our kids. In my more than 25 years in education, I have watched our family struggles grow. In 2000, 33% of our Nevada children were eligible for the free and reduced lunch program. In 2019, that number had ballooned to 65% of our school children. And with the start of the pandemic, things have only gotten worse. We have continued to see increases in homelessness and evictions. And I can tell you straight off my caseload, the number of children that I am seeing who have recently lost a primary caregiver has more than tripled. Children are walking into our buildings with levels of anxiety and depression symptoms I have never seen. And we take these kids and we push them into a school with a counselor who probably has 450 kids on their caseload. We throw them into a classroom with 35 other children and a teacher that has some training on how to support their anxiety and their depression. And honestly, let's be real. We're kind of lucky right now if we've got somebody in there who's certified to teach. 20% of the teachers in my buildings right now are long-term subs. And we are supporting our students with staff who are paid $9.99 an hour with no benefits. Or maybe they've been working for us for 10 years and they're now paid $12.85 an hour, still with no benefits. My colleagues and I need help. We need support. And I don't mean that we need millions to go into a rainy day fund or millions to go into a fund to support school mental health. I mean that we need dramatic and immediate increase in general funding so that school districts can reduce class sizes, create appropriate service loads, and pay people a reasonable amount so that they stay in education rather than walking away from years of training, including a lot of training from many of the initiatives you've discussed today. I love working in public education. I hate what we are doing to children in Nevada.
Thank you very much, and thank you for what you do. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Ryan Small, RYANSMALL. I'm a high school English teacher in Washoe County for one of only 2 Title I high schools in Senator Ganzert's district, where I'm also a voter. I'm a member of the Washoe Education Association. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in English Literature from UC Berkeley, a teaching credential, Master's Equivalency, and a proud father of a student in this district. I am highly qualified and considered highly effective. Not only that, but I love what I do because I believe in students, and I do so by providing them with opportunities. I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and speak on behalf of certified and classified colleagues across the state who believe in students. I came here today to speak about opportunities that many of you in this chamber have been given, opportunities in education that, without which, would stymie innovation, needed to put Nevada back on the map towards a robust economy. I know that you don't need a reminder of the abysmal conditions students are currently attending school in, nor rattle off figures about student performance, the largest class sizes in the nation, among the lowest per pupil funding, program cuts and critical needs spread thin, a lack of funding given to teachers. Rather, I'm here today to talk about the opportunities I provide my students with so that they may secure a brighter future for all Nevadans. I work in an inner city school because I too thrived in an inner city high school where I grew up in. And those teachers provide me with opportunities. Teachers like Mr. Scott, a graphic designer, who provided me with skills and job training so that I could get a job and support my education. Teachers like Frau Cinquini, who believed in my potential and gave me opportunities to focus in language club, deterring me from joining a gang. And even Mr. Vache, who spent 20 minutes every single day discussing job fairs and scholarship opportunities, putting me on a path to do the same for others. Without these teachers who believed in me and gave me opportunities, I would not be here today detailing why I lack the resources to support and provide for my students, why I cannot provide for my own family of 3, where I have to choose between food insecurity and my 6-year-old daughter bringing a bag of fruit to work to provide my students with a healthy snack. I'm here today because I can no longer provide opportunities to my students who struggle as I did, who come from broken homes, who are going through a severe mental health crisis, who look from me for a safe space. This is why I'm here today, to implore all of you to make a decisive action towards providing economic stability and opportunities for your community members. Now is the time for 20. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good morning, my fellow Nevadans. My name is Sean Richardson, and I'm a member of the Washoe Education Association. This is my 11th year teaching, and I currently teach social studies at Reno High School. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from University of Nevada, Reno, and a master's in education from the University of Nevada, Reno. And I'm here to implore you to make history and properly fund Nevada's education for the first time ever. My entire experience with education in this state has been one of overcrowded schools and classrooms. When I moved here in 1992, I went to a brand new Marvin Moss Elementary School in Sparks that was overcrowded on the first day it opened. As an 8th grader 3 years later, I went to a brand new Mendive Middle School in Sparks, which again was overcrowded by over 300 students the day it opened. By the time I reached my junior year of high school, things were so bad at Reed High that we had a split schedule with some students starting at 7 a.m. and other students starting at 9:30 a.m. and attending school until 3:30 in the afternoon. Still, at the age of 28, I changed careers and went back to school to become a teacher. My first job while in grad school was at my former school, Mendive Middle School. I spent part of the day teaching in a converted storage closet in the cafeteria. When I started working full-time 2 years later at Trainer Middle School, I was lucky enough to have my own classroom, unlike several of my coworkers who did not and had to go from class to class teaching off a cart or share a room in a converted office that was meant for one person, teaching up to 10 to 15 students in such a small space. Last year, I moved to Reno High School, and my new classroom is a converted computer lab that barely fits the 32 desks in it because it is so small. But again, I consider myself lucky because we have teachers teaching in the cafeteria, theater, and in hallways. At no point in the 30 years that I've been involved in education in this state has there been proper funding and support for education. What message are we sending to these students? I thought it was a joke when I was a 17-year-old in high school, and now 25 years later, I find it pathetic and appalling. How are students supposed to feel like education is important sitting in a storage closet? How are we supposed to keep teachers when they can't even have their own classroom, let alone afford to buy a home in the city in which they teach? Now is the time to invest in our students, our teachers, our support staff, and to let people know that education is valued in Nevada. Now is the time to put actions to word, to stand up and meet this moment in history. We have the money. The question is, do you have the courage and the will? The stakes are too high to delay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
My name is Melissa Rose, and I'm the mother to 2 Washoe students. I'm also a history teacher at Sparks High School and a WA rep. Senator Gansler, I'm also a member of your district. I'd like to thank you guys for letting us speak today and for your time. Since my time is limited, I'll get right to the point. Our public schools are failing. I see it from every angle as a mom, as a teacher, and as a future school leader. Our substitute teachers make $19 an hour. For perspective, that's how much my 16-year-old daughter makes at Five Guys Burgers and Fries. That's insulting. This low pay is across the board. Maintenance workers start at $22 an hour. Bus drivers, $18 an hour. Nutrition services and custodial staff make $14 an hour. These are not competitive wages, and it's no wonder that we have so many vacancies. What happens when these vacancies remain unfilled? The people who remain are tasked with more jobs for their low pay. Or jobs just don't get done. Our classes aren't clean, buildings are barely maintained, and parents have to figure out rides back and forth to school for their children, some of them that just don't have the means to do so. Us teachers, we get to sub during our prep periods. Or we can combine 2 classes together and have 60 kids in one class. Or we can have a kid from every 3rd grade class assigned to a different classroom in the building, and they all work quietly in the back of the room with a book and a computer. They barely have access to their curriculum. None of these are good options, but these are the choices that our school leaders are tasked with every day. These are impossible decisions, and they're piecemeal solutions to systemic problems. These school leaders are also constantly refreshing their email to see if anybody has attached to the jobs that they posted. Anybody. There was a time when I first started working in this district where teacher jobs were competitive. Multiple people applied and they were all qualified candidates. No one wants to teach here anymore. We start our teachers at $41,000 a year. I want you guys to think about what that actually means, what that looks like. That means $2,960 a month after taxes. Imagine living in Reno on $2,900 and $60 a month. Imagine what kind of apartment you could afford to rent for yourself. I don't think that if you look on Zillow, you'll find anything under $900. These people can't afford to live on their own. They can't afford to stick with the profession that they went to school for. There's a huge turnover among our young teachers. The only people who can afford to teach, they got in when the getting was good and they bought houses before our housing market went up. They were able to build a nest egg when teacher pay was fair and when it kept up with inflation. But those people are retiring soon. They're leaving. And what's going to happen when they're gone? This system is going to implode on itself. We're not going to be able to sustain it anymore, and teachers aren't going to have to strike because there's not going to be enough of us to do so. Please fund education. Please fund educators. The time for 20 is right now. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm China Metz Bannister, and I'm a member of the Washoe Education Association. I've taught algebra at Sparks High for 2 years, and I've been tutoring in math for 13. Don't do the math on that. I have 2 bachelor's degrees from UNR through the Nevada Teach program, one in secondary education and one in mathematics with a specialization in statistics. At university, I worked as a waitress, making about $25 an hour with tips, and I had at least 2 jobs at any given time to pay my tuition, so I could eventually support myself with 1 job and be able to afford to travel. Always wanted to, but never could, working so much to pay my tuition. With 2 degrees under my belt, I left waiting tables and took a pay cut to teach future generations, making less than a manager at Panda Express, as my students have so graciously pointed out. I wish I was making as much as I was when I thought I was broke as a university student. I'd love for my kids to be able to walk into my classroom during the wintertime without feeling the need to wrap up in blankets to learn comfortably. I'd also love for them to be able to get new books so they could stop asking why Obama went from president to junior senator, since that's what his current position is according to the books they're using right now. Last year, we ranked 48th in spending and 49th in educational attainment. I know correlation doesn't always equal causation, and I don't know a lot about statistics, yes, I do, because that's what one of my multiple degrees is in. So take it from someone who's been studying statistics for years and is now a teacher. That correlation is definitely not coincidental. Education has a huge return on investment, just like mining and gaming. So please show up for the people who are going to be running things in 25 years like we do every day.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
For the record, my name is Sarah Negrete, and I am the director of the Northeastern Nevada Regional Professional Development Program, the RPDPs. And I wanted just to share briefly what the Regional Professional Development Programs do and the impact we have across the state. There are 3 RPDPs, one in the Northeast, one in the South, and one in the Northwest. And we provide professional learning in 3 broad categories. The first is instructional training, which includes workshops, courses for endorsements, courses that teachers need for renewal of their license. We also provide observation and mentoring services, which typically looks like expert coaches in the classroom working with teachers to refine exactly what they are hoping to refine in their own situation and context. We do that both live, virtually, and via email sometimes. When a teacher just wants to have a just-in-time question, they will email us. And we also do a lot of consulting and collaboration. That includes working with the Nevada Department of Education. It includes working alongside our district and school leaders to plan and prepare what they need most for their teachers in their schools and contexts. The impact we have and the accountability of our programs is evident through the in-depth reports that we provide every year. Each of those reports is aligned directly to the NRS and to the professional learning standards. Just to address a few questions that came up earlier about the RPDPs, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of the work that we do is ongoing throughout the school year. And it is aligned to the Nevada Professional Learning Standards. In addition, each of the RPDPs are involved in teacher retention efforts based on the requests that we receive from the districts we serve. And finally, one of the examples of how we work side by side with the Nevada Department of Education is, I'm sure you know that the department requires each school to supply the department each year a school performance plan. And it's through that continuous improvement process that we really step in and we support our schools both in direct partnership with leaders in preparing those in some cases, and in all cases, we are sure that our professional learning opportunities provided in schools are actually aligned to those schools' school performance plans. So that is just one example of how we work side by side with the department to make sure that the work is moving forward in a way that is both beneficial for the department, the schools, and the students that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and go ahead, please, when you're ready.
For the record, I'm Shelley Smith. I'm the director of the Southern Nevada Regional Professional Development Program. As you're aware, a 3% increase to our budget was submitted on our behalf. However, in light of the increase proposed under SB 231, we would request an additional enhancement consistent with the proposed raises. We do not receive this money. This money goes to the districts. Our budget is fixed. If that number lands at 10%, it will cost the RPDPs $394,867 per year to fund the increases negotiated, PERS, and health-related costs. A question came up about the 3% increase in 2019. That was directly on the salary line and an increase just like this. Then Governor proposed an increase of 3%. The RPDPs do not get it. We have to come out of our pocket for that, and so our budget was increased to include those funds. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and your attention to this issue.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Matt Wiegand. I'm a teacher in Washoe County, middle school teacher. I got a quick anecdote for you guys to kind of explain how I'm feeling as a teacher right now. I apologize for my lateness. My wife got violently ill, so I had to take care of the kids this morning. Imagine for a second that you're a boat worker, okay? And you love working on boats, so much so that you went to school and went into debt to become the best boat worker that you could be. You graduate from college, boat college, and you get assigned to a boat, and you realize pretty quickly that boat is sinking. It is taking on a lot of water. And you put in your extra time, you put in extra money, your own money, to try to fix this boat. It doesn't work. So you turn to your superiors, and you say, hey guys, I need some help. I need some more funding. I need some more people to help work on this boat. And they say, well, we're not going to give you that. But what we will require is that you help the boat's test scores and that you have the boat ready to sail by 3 p.m., I'm assuming. And that doesn't work. As good intention as it is, it doesn't address the problem at all. But you go, you're dedicated, so you go back, you work on that boat as hard as you can, still sinks, goes under the water. But you love working on this thing, you're not going to let it just sink, so you tie a rope to it. You tie that other end of the rope to yourself. And you're going to pull this boat back up. And of course, it starts pulling you down. And you're drowning, essentially. The water's up to your chin. You're sputtering. You're coughing. You're not going to make it. You have to cut this rope. And then somebody comes up to you. And they're holding a life jacket in their hand. And you say, hey, can you throw me that life jacket? Because I'm literally drowning in front of you. And they look back at you and they go, ooh, sorry. This life jacket's for a rainy day. If you understand this, I'm guessing you graduated or you passed 7th grade English, so you understand metaphors. But it's just how I feel right now, and it's how every one of my colleagues that I've talked to feels. We're drowning. We need your help desperately. I implore you guys to take up the Time for 20 movement and to pass the Respect for Teachers Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in Carson City? Seeing no one, we'll go to Las Vegas. I don't believe I see anybody there, but if there's anyone in Las Vegas, would you please come forward? Seeing no one, BPS, is there anyone on the line, please?
you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
This is Rachel Sapina for the record. I work as a part-time bilingual interventionist and teacher's aide at Jesse Beck Elementary School in Washoe County, and also work as the Preschool Development Grant Birth through 5 Grant Manager in the Office of Early Learning and Development in the Nevada Department of Education. However, I'm calling today as a private citizen. I would like to share important considerations surrounding dual language education in the state of Nevada in support of the pilot immersion funding as a specific set of funding that allows for the asset-based additive instruction models that differ from English as a second language or English language learner models. I appreciate the many additive linguistic and cultural considerations that have come up during this conversation today. Language is the core of all of our identities, impacting how we think, read, write, dream, communicate, and build relationships with others. Our multilingual students deserve the opportunity to develop academically in both of their languages and graduate with the seal of biliteracy. I received my master's in education in bilingual early childhood education, 1st through 3rd grade, from an out-of-state institution because no such training program is available in Nevada. Having researched dual language education for more than a decade, including a recent culminating case study at Jesse Beck Elementary, Nevada's longest operating dual language education program, which began in the 2008 school year. My 2 young children currently attend this immersion program at Beck, and I have a preschooler who will also attend. A group of parents from Beck Elementary formed 4 years ago with the mission to support and advocate for the development of biliterate, bilingual, and culturally responsive school programs by promoting high levels of academic achievement and fostering diversity within the dual language program and our community. Through our group's 14 years of experience in both successes and challenges supporting our students, we have found that our most consistent challenges stem from a lack of dedicated funding and policy that supports a well-developed infrastructure from the district and state level. Dual language education programs need specific funding because bilingual education is different than English-only education. Funding for ELLs with an English-only approach is not sufficient. Simple examples of funding differences include resources such as ample access to library books written in the languages spoken by students at the school, funding specific intervention tools and strategies based in bilingual learning, not solely on English acquisition, and specific leadership and teacher training opportunities designed to support dual language teaching. Furthermore, our bilingual teachers do double the work, teaching in both languages, and never get additional pay for sharing this asset with our students. We need funding and dedicated allocations to retain highly qualified bilingual teachers who have been prepared to deliver instruction in 2 languages. Research by Thomas and Collier has proven DLE, dual language education, to be the most effective evidence-based long-term instructional approach to actually bridge and close the academic achievement gap for English learners to their monolingual peers, approaching more equitable access for all children in our state to graduate high school prepared for college or career. There are many action-based education-focused groups and individuals currently working to support increasing access to dual language education programs in our state, from higher education to support to family engagement, and it always comes down to funding, policy, and infrastructure, or the lack thereof. I hope that my children can continue their bilingual academic education in our state in a well-implemented continuum of vertically aligned schools, elementary, middle, and high school, in schools that are adequately funded by our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
Good morning to all members of the Senate Committee on Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the corresponding subcommittees on education. My name is Elena Joder, and I am a dual language bilingual education social studies teacher at Desert Pines High School in Clark County. I currently teach Relaciones Internacionales to freshmen and Gobierno de Estados Unidos to seniors. I teach these classes in Spanish. I am also a PhD candidate at UNLV, and my research is in bilingualism and language policy. Finally, and more notably, I am the product of bilingual education back in Montevideo, Uruguay. I am calling to speak about Budget Account 2699, which makes reference to the allocation of funding to piloting dual language programs. I have been working in dual language for 9 years, since my beginnings as an educator, first in the state of Mississippi and in Nevada for the last 7. Generally speaking, one of the biggest challenges of moving into a language acquisition program that is asset-based, such as dual language, and moving away from subtractive programs, such as English as a second language ones, is precisely establishing the difference in frameworks and purposes of the various models of language acquisition. I kindly ask the committee to bear in mind that dual language is not the same as ESL, TESOL, ELL programs, and similar. The money must be allocated to programs that honor the 4 pillars of bilingual education, namely 1, critical consciousness, 2, bilingualism and biliteracy, 3, grade level achievement, and 4, sociocultural competence. CCSD's dual language education model intent, stated in its handbook, reads as follows. In partnership with families and the community, the Clark County School District offers students within the dual language program opportunities to use their full linguistic and cultural repertoires to engage in content-rich, multilingual, and multicultural learning across the curriculum. Students receive high-quality, grade-level content instruction in a supportive environment guided by research-informed practices, resulting in linguistic, intercultural, and academic proficiency. Let this serve as a guideline at the time of disbursing the money to the asking programs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next caller, please.
The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time today. Subcommittee members, that completes our business for today. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you in the morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.